Welcome to Everything You Need to Know About the Ascension of Humanity, the podcast where ancient wisdom meets modern science and spiritual evolution gets real. I'm Heather, an energy healer, channel, and spiritual coach with Divine Ascension Company. Each week, we're diving deep into the mysteries of human consciousness, spiritual awakening, and the profound transformation happening within us and around us. But here's the thing. We're not doing this with our heads in the clouds. We're bringing neuroscience, psychology, quantum physics, and cutting-edge research to the table alongside meditation, energy work, and timeless spiritual teachings. Because the truth is, the ascension of humanity isn't some far-off cosmic event. It's happening right now in the choices we make, the awareness we cultivate, and the healing we do within ourselves. Whether you're curious about how mindfulness literally rewires your brain, why shadow work is backed by depth psychology, or what coherence between your heart and mind actually means scientifically, you're in the right place. We'll explore practices like breathwork, meditation, and emotional alchemy, not as abstract concepts, but as tangible tools grounded in both spiritual wisdom and scientific understanding. And here's where it gets even better. In our bonus episodes, you'll hear from real people sharing real stories. These are the warriors, the healers, the everyday seekers who've walked through their own darkness and found their light. They'll share their breakthroughs, their struggles, and the resources that actually helped them along the way. Because personal growth isn't a solo journey, and you deserve to know you're not alone. So whether you're just beginning to question the nature of reality, or you're deep in your spiritual practice, this podcast is your companion on the path. It's time to expand, to awaken, and to rise together. Let's begin. Have you ever had that feeling of finally finding your people? The ones who speak your language, who get what you're going through, who don't look at you like you're crazy when you talk about energy work or channeling, or the fact that the world is going through a massive consciousness shift right now. That's what today's guest has built, on a global scale. Tam Dillon is a practitioner mentor, founder of the global collective Critical Mass, and the creator of the Yogic Tarot, a system that bridges yoga philosophy and tarot practice in a way that honestly blew my mind when she explained it. Tam has been on the spiritual path since she was 14 years old, and she spent decades not just walking it, but building structures that help other practitioners walk it more sustainably and ethically. What I love about this conversation is how honest it is about the spiritual community, the good, the messy, and the parts nobody wants to talk about. We go into false gurus, the certification trap, why retreats and plant medicine journeys don't work if you skip the integration, and why the world right now is basically one giant tower card moment. Tam also introduced me to the idea of critical mass as a place for practitioners and for anyone who feels called to be part of the shift in global consciousness, even if they're not a professional healer. If you've been feeling isolated in your journey and looking for a community that actually gets it, pay attention to this one. Let's get into it. Okay. Welcome back to another episode, guys. We have a very special guest. Her name is Tam. She does a lot of really amazing things, and we're going to be doing some really cool collaborations here in the future. I'm super excited to introduce her to everyone. How are you doing today, Tam?
I'm doing wonderfully. Thanks, Heather. I appreciate being on your show today. I'm excited about this conversation.
Me too. Awesome. So why don't we get started and just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how you got there, what you do?
All right. So you've already introduced me. I'm Tam Dillon. My main focus has been a mentor for other practitioners. I help them bridge the gap between the sacredness of the work that they do and the everyday practicalities of real life. So running a business, relationships, managing a home, finances, all those wonderful things. And then I'm the founder of a global collective called Critical Mass. We have two primary functions for that. The first being facilitators of the global shift in consciousness, and then restoring dignity and respect to spirituality and its practices. We function very much on education, very pro collaboration over competition. And what got me started, in all honesty, a lot of episodes of Charmed as a kid that just piqued my interest in magic and witchcraft. And there's this whole spiritual world out there. And at age 14, I wandered into the bookstore and got my very first set of books on Wicca and witchcraft and magic. And I've been down the spiritual rabbit hole since then. It's not a path that I've ever really stepped off. It's one that's just continuously progressed in multiple different directions.
Yeah, that's amazing. I have a similar background too. I started studying Wicca in high school because
Mm-hmm.
I'm all about not necessarily the spells and all of that people think about. I mean, I'm sure everybody's seen The Craft by now, but the taking care of the planet, Mother Earth, and giving back, and it really is our home. It's our, I mean, Mother Gaia has held us and taken care of us through food, through oxygen, through just giving us a solid place to put our feet on, and giving back to her and utilizing her in a way that's, a partnership rather than just a resource to be violated is very important, and actually is important in a lot of the healing stuff that I do now. And I have an altar, I do some candle magic, whatever, but it all kind of ties together. So that's interesting because not many people, whether they maybe just don't admit it or whatever, but they don't bring that kind of mentality into their spiritual practices. They kind of Witchcraft, I think, has more of a stigma around it than being woo-woo does.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you've put that so beautifully that it really is. It's a nature-based practice that reconnects you back with the very source that we come from. I mean, we're all of nature. I think that's one of the big disconnects in the world today is, you know, people take nature for granted. You wander into your backyard and you're like, there's trees, yay, but like these are the things that give you life. Like this is how you function. You take the trees away, we don't have oxygen. So for me, those practices where you're honoring nature and you're reconnecting with nature, I think they're vital for us as a global society. We've got to have that connection to the very thing that roots us.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I mean, one can't survive without the other. There's this meme that's going around that I keep seeing about how plants are literally holding us and giving us life because they give us oxygen. And then when we die, we go back into the ground and they consume our bodies. And I'm like, well, if you think about it, they're doing the same thing. Like we're doing the same thing. Have you ever eaten a vegetable? Like we're doing the
Mm.
exact same thing to them. And it's supposed to be a very symbiotic relationship. And not just for food, but for many other things as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's symbiotic is the perfect word for that relationship. You can't have one without the other. Nature feeds us, we feed nature.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about the critical mass thing, because I think that's going to be very important for the audience that I have, because there's a lot of light workers. Everybody talks about the, 144,000, the star seeds, all the things. But I just recently joined myself, and it's an amazing community that you've built. And I think there's a lot of people who could actually benefit from being a part of a community like that.
Absolutely. So critical mass, the reason it started is the ancestors told me this is what you need to do. So in late 2024, I formalized what would become a global collective. I connected with four other practitioners and I said to them, this is what I'm starting. Do you want to be part of the committee? And they were like, oh yeah, this is exactly what we're looking for, exactly what we want to be a part of. And they helped to shape the foundations for critical mass. And as we flowed through 2025, so it took more shape. We laid out the different series that we wanted to put out. As we grew into late half 2025, we formalized our full mission, our values, the ethics that we build our foundations on. What are the main driving forces behind critical mass? And then we then built the full committee that we now have. There's 10 of us. And I mean, I wouldn't be able to do critical mass without my committee members. They work alongside me. As much as I'm steering the ship, I wouldn't be able to move that ship anyway without my committee members. And that's the one of the core things about the global collective, is that we've got to collaborate with one another. We can't do things in isolation. The world is at such a tipping point right now on different scales and places. And if one practitioner try to restore dignity and respect to spirituality, as an example, that would take them lifetimes to get that right. But you get a collective together to help you with that, you could do it in a couple of years and maybe even less.
Mm-hmm.
So, the whole collaboration of a competition being one of our foundations is so important, because for a lot of practitioners, and myself included, especially in my early years, it's a very isolating field to be in. A lot of people don't really understand what it is that you do. A lot of people be like, oh, that's woo-woo, or that's nonsense. And then you start to connect with these other people that speak your language, and they get you, and they're like, oh yeah. And then you feel seen and you feel heard, and you feel like something, like you belong to something, like you're a part of something.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to do that on the global scale is just such a beautiful thing. I'm seeing connections happen with people all over the world, and collaborations happening with people all over the world. And it's such an amazing thing to witness. The benefits of being part of that ecosystem is that you find that community, you find that healthy collaboration. You really get to learn what spirituality is. What are these practices all about? And how can I be a part of these practices? So it's a very warm, welcoming space where if you don't know, ask, because someone will likely be able to give you the answers. There's mentorship, there's no restrictions on you've got to have so many years of practice behind you. You don't even need to be a practitioner if you're just called to be part of the shift in global consciousness, or you feel like you're here for a bigger purpose. Critical mass is absolutely a space for you.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's like you said, it's truly a beautiful thing because I see so many people on social media and different, platforms and groups that I belong to, where people are like, man, like nobody I know understands what I'm going through. Nobody, like, I feel like I've lost all my friends, and they go through this isolation period because, and I've talked about this before, but we're all scattered right now because we're holding the light grid for the planet. We have to be spread out right now because one person holding light and holding a high vibrational frequency can affect, I've heard numbers of up to 5,000 people around them. So if we were
Mm.
all together in one place, how would we be able to help the people around us, or the ley lines and the grid of Mother Gaia, because she's ascending with us, right? She's going through this process with us. So it's important for us to be scattered. So to have a community where people can go and find these like-minded people rather than just getting stuck in a Facebook group that has a false guru who's running it, or finding people who don't understand exactly what's happening is extremely important, especially now with all the things that are happening in the world. I think more people are going to start opening up about these things and being more open-minded to, what else is there, because this isn't working anymore.
Absolutely. Oh, I couldn't agree more with that. The especially with the things that are going on right now, you have these gurus, and I use that word very loosely, that are being called out for some horrific, heinous things, and
Yeah.
those things aren't new within the spiritual spaces. If you the Dalai Lama, Patabi Jas, Bikram Chaudhry, just to mention a couple from the yogic side of things, that abuse of spiritual power has been going for a very long time. And a lot of people aren't aware that that kind of thing happens within spiritual spaces. People hear the word spirituality or guru or, spiritual leader or guide or teacher, and they think, a person who's deeply enlightened, they'll be pure, loving compassion and kindness. But the thing that most people don't understand with spirituality and its practices is that it's going to cultivate who and what you are. So if you're not checking yourself and you're not checking your ego, you're not checking your power dynamics, your triggers, your patterns, your practices are going to enhance that. They're going to cultivate those things in you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to form unhealthy spiritual practitioners, unhealthy gurus. And I think one of the best things that were ever said to me was many, many years ago, and it's by someone who is a yogi practitioner. And he said to me, I was asking the question about gurus and perhaps finding a teacher for myself. And he said, if I can give you any advice, is that you are your own best guru because you live your life and your existence, and only you know you, like inside and out and wholeheartedly. And no other guide or teacher can fully step into that role of being your guru. They can guide you and they can advise you and they can show you some direction, but they cannot be the authority over you and your spirituality and your practice and the person that you become. And I found that just so helpful and beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say like you have all the answers within and nobody can take this journey for you. It's all about you. And even being a healer, like I'm
Mm.
not healing you. I'm giving you the safe space and giving you a little guidance and direction so that you remember that you have the ability to heal yourself. I can't tell you what to do. I can give you some guidance and support, but ultimately it's up to you to make the choice to walk through that door and to take the first step on that healing journey. And
Yes,
even, yeah, and even with the gurus, like there is no one size fits all answer. And we're supposed to be doing the opposite of what organized religion has been doing and creating a dependency. We're supposed to be empowering people to be their own leaders, be their own their own thinkers about their life, their own decision makers, and not put that power over people and basically take their power away, which is what everyone else is doing. That's kind of the opposite of what we stand for.
absolutely. And that's the thing is you said it so perfectly, taking the power away. We don't realize the level of like authority that we're in when we're holding space for another person, because they're coming with their vulnerabilities, they're coming with their issues and their patterns and their triggers and all of their stuff, and they're looking for someone to say, here's the way, here's the direction. So they're handing over so much of themselves to you already,
Mm.
and to step into that role in a toxic or unethical manner, where the power dynamic is, you can mold this person however you want, and you take that healing process away from them, you're absolutely disempowering them and you're disempowering their entire journey. And that's not what we're for. That's not what a practitioner is supposed to be.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think the part of the stigma that I was talking about before is there's been so many of these false gurus and these people who are like, I have all the answers, come follow me. This is the right way to do it. This is the only way to do it. Everybody else is wrong. You're doing it wrong. Do it this way. Like, and people, it creates a bad experience and puts a bad taste in people's mouths because now they have this idea about the spiritual community and what they're doing when that's really not the case. Like, you don't want to let one bad apple ruin it for everybody, but it just seems to be a trend in the past that has made, more challenges for, more ethical and intuitive practitioners like yourself who don't follow those same patterns and to have another hurdle to cross to be like, okay, I'm sorry that you had that experience, but let me try to help you in a different way.
Absolutely. And that just becomes dogmatic, right? You're nothing, no different to unhealthy organized religion, where the pope or the priest or the pastor is your only way to get to God or source. That's the same thing with the elevated gurus. They are the way. They're only their way is the right way. And yet, if you line all the doctrines up next to one another and you line all the spiritual practices up next to one another, there's consistency. There's
Hmm.
consistency in the very core of what they are. You remove the power dynamic of, my way is the right way, and you're left with there's multiple ways to get to the same destination, and it's picking the route that suits you, which is the individual journey. It's the individual path. There isn't one right way to do different things.
Right. And I kind of bash organized religion, but I'm only doing it because I tried to find answers in organized religion when I was younger, and there was too many things that I didn't agree with, but I was able to take what resonated with me and to bring that with me when I decided to go another route because I didn't believe that the power within that structure was the only way for me to talk to God or source or the universe. I was like, that doesn't make sense to me. Why can't I speak to them directly? Or why do people pray? Like, are we praying to you? Are we praying to, like, what? It just didn't make sense. So
Mm.
if you look at the basic, very core fundamentals of what each of these religions or paths are trying to teach, they're all saying the same thing, just using different words, different people to express the same basic underlying ideas. And so just probability alone, like there's got to be something to that if all of them are using the same core values and beliefs, just interpreting it into whatever way works for them. And once you get past that and actually read between the lines and be like, okay, well, Jesus was trying to teach us this, the Buddha was trying to teach us this, and it's kind of the same thing, just using different words and different techniques and practices on how to get to that, like you said, final destination.
That's it exactly. And that's why there can't be just one single right way. And I think a lot of people get caught up in the semantics around it, whether we're using the term Christ consciousness or Krishna consciousness or Buddha consciousness, or yin-based consciousness. It's all based in the same thing. I mean, if you look at the very teachings of Jesus and Buddha. I mean, there's some beautiful books out there that take the teachings of both and actually lay them out next to one another. They're teaching the identical things. They just had different words. But I
Mhm.
mean, both Jesus and Buddha were all about compassion, being right-minded, having right speech, be non-harming. And they both taught that we're not the ultimate authority. We're not the ultimate power. That sits inside of you. I mean, quote Jesus, he even said, everything I can do, you can do, and more than. So, and it's so accurate.
Mhm.
So all these great teachers teach us the very same things. They're just using different words for the exact same stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit because I want you to share with everyone about your tarot deck that you made.
Oh, yes. So the Yogic Tarot is a system of practice. I don't know if there'll be an actual deck that'll go with it. If I can find an artist or someone willing to make the artwork for me, because 78 pieces of artwork is a lot of work. But the system itself is there and structured. So the Yogic Tarot takes all 78 cards of the tarot and assigns a yogic philosophy and a yogic pose to it. So you're getting the full experience of that tarot card. So while you're practicing the pose, you reflect on the card's meanings and you reflect on the philosophy that's attached to that card. And you're looking to physically embody that. In the physical practice of yoga is just a single component of the whole system of yoga. I mean, yoga comprises of 8 limbs in total. So the practice looks to give you the physical component so that you're embodying that philosophy, you're embodying that meaning. And because the physical practice stimulates things like the energetic body, the mental, emotional body, the intuitive body, and of course the authentic self, you're getting that learning and lesson across all the bodies. So you're integrating it across all the bodies. It's definitely my passion project. I'm gonna go to the grave and be like, hey, I made that. That's like it's my achievement for this lifetime. And it took about 3 years to put the full system together, and now coming into year 5 of having, when I originally started it back in 2021, I'm now prepping to teach my first runner teacher trainings later this year. but it's absolutely a system of practice that I hope anybody would be able to pick up and take on for themselves. You know, you don't have to specifically be a yoga teacher or a professional tarot reader. I've designed it in a way that it's beginner friendly as possible. In the guidebook, I do teach how to get in and out of the poses safely so that absolutely anybody can pick up the system. But I really would like to teach other yoga teachers to teach this in their classes to their students because it gives them something unique to offer for their classes as well.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And I love hearing about projects like this because for me personally, like I like blending science because I have my psychology background. I like blending science with the spirituality aspect of things. But I
Mm.
love the fact that there's so many modalities. You have Reiki, you have breath work, you have yoga, you have tarot readings, you have so many different aspects of the spiritual community. So I've found that there's a lot of people who specialize or enjoy one thing over another, or they're like, oh, I'm a yoga teacher or I do yoga every day, but they've never really did a deep dive into the other things that are available to them. So when you blend those things together, like yoga and tarot, it really gives people a broader perspective of what's really out there and what's possible for them as a tool.
So and you know, there's really beautiful ways to integrate different modalities into one another. I mean, tarot was my main modality for many, many years. And then I started adding energy work to it. And I was like, there's a way to integrate these two modalities. And I would either read for my client beforehand to see, you know, what work did they need to have done in their energy session. And then with a close of reading afterwards to see what had shifted, what still maybe needed a bit of aligning work. And then when I started doing my teacher training for yoga back in 2021, when we started to unpack the Yoga Sutras and the philosophy, and I just kept thinking, like, that's this tarot card. Like this aligns with this card so beautifully. And I was like, I've got to do this. I've got to integrate these two modalities together. So there are ways to blend the modalities. I think where things start to get messy is where we get stuck in the certification trap and we're like, what other modality can I add to my field of expertise, you know, to my offerings? And that's when we start to get a little bit messy as practitioners. But if you have complementary modalities that you can blend together, you're creating a really beautiful holistic system for the clients that you work with. I mean, I love your blend of psychology and spirituality. You know, spirituality is the missing component in Western psychology. You know, it doesn't treat the soul at all. You know, it treats the symptoms, not the roots, if you will.
Right. Absolutely. And it's interesting because I got my master's degree before I really started doing energy work and I was going through my own inner healing journey, but I didn't have the right words for it. I spent the last, I don't know, 18 years doing work on myself and using these philosophical and psychological concepts. And it's interesting now looking back, especially when I was in class and I was learning about like groupthink and, all these different things in the psychology field that I'm like, wow, that really resonates with, X, Y, or Z in the spiritual community and what we're going through. But also the fact that we have mind, body, and spirit, right? We have all of these different systems within us
Mm.
that interconnect and work to make the whole, system whole. And so when you look at just yoga or breath work or Reiki, like you also have to do the work. Like it frustrates me sometimes when people are like, oh, I went on this beautiful ayahuasca journey or, this beautiful yoga retreat. And they are like, oh, I feel so much better. Well, great. That's amazing. And I'm so happy for you. I love that for you. But it's not going to continue to last if you don't do the work also.
Mm. Yes, yes. People look for the quick fixes. You know, this ayahuasca ceremony is going to solve all my problems. You know, it's going to fix my childhood trauma. You know, or if I go and have my Reiki fix, once a year or every 6 months, it's going to soothe my soul. But that you've got to do the integration, you've got to do the work, and it's continual. You know, there's no one big release and then all your problems are solved.
Nope.
If the world worked that way, we would be so much further along as a society. There, and I think that that's where a lot of people come to spirituality, with that misconception that I just need this one retreat, or I just need this one experience, or this one healer. Let me go and see this great shaman on the mountaintop, and he's going to fix everything for me. And that's the thing, is that they're not going to fix anything for you. You're going to fix yourself. They're going to provide the space in which you can do that work, and the work becomes continual. It's not a one-time thing and then you're done. It's continual, as you say, and you've got to be doing the integration. And that's why people come back from the retreats and they're restored and well rested and they feel amazing, and then they get to the end of the week of work and they're like, my life sucks again. What happened? This wonderful feeling that I had a week ago is now gone. Well, because you haven't continued doing the work. You've had someone hold space for a weekend and you've scratched the surface. You've got to climb in there and unpack and do all of it, and you've got to do the integrating at the same time.
Yeah.
People look for the awakenings and the transformation and the aha moments, and like those are all beautiful and wonderful, but if you're not integrating those moments, you're just going to keep repeating the same things over and over again.
Absolutely. And it's like, so the ayahuasca, I keep using the same examples, but the journey, the aha moments, all of these things, like they're bringing up stuff from deep down to the surface that need your attention. It's not an automatic release. It's bringing it to your attention so that you know what to focus on, you know what needs to be healed. And I know I can speak from personal experience, even with my own healing journey. Like there's things, childhood traumas, repeated behavioral patterns that I've addressed and went through the whole healing process, the integration process, and that wasn't enough. Like there's everything is an onion. Everything has so many layers to it that I've had to go back and I've had to heal things more than once, because you're like, oh, well, I healed this aspect of it, but it's actually affecting me in other ways. So I have to go back to it, because it's not, like I said before, it's not a one size fits all fix or an overnight fix. There's no magic pill you can take. It just helps you. And even with the tarot cards, I started reading tarot cards as a psychology tool to help people look at their problems from a different perspective. Well, that's only one perspective. Like there's so many different layers and so many different parts of these things that are affecting our life that we have to look at individually. We can't just do a blanket cleansing. That's not going to work.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes you do the work, and that work is being done on one of the subtle bodies, for example. So in yoga, you have what we call the koshas. And if we think of like a Russian nesting doll, is a really beautiful analogy for that. Your big doll on the outside is the physical body, and then the next one down is the energetic, the mental, emotional, the intuitive, and then your Atman, your authentic self. And you could go to a yoga class, or you could go for a tarot reading or a Reiki session, or an ayahuasca retreat, and that work gets done, the mental emotional layer, and you find a bit of alignment there. But what about the other layers? You've got to work through those layers as well. I mean, Shrek says it beautifully. Ogres are like onions, so are humans. Humans are like onions too. Sometimes we're a little bit stinky and smelly. We make one another cry. But we've got to peel back those layers and see what's going on under there. And it's a spiral, the work that we do. It's not linear. Healing work is never linear. Sometimes you go all the way down to point A to come back to point K, to head down to point Z, to come back to A again and think, should I've been here before? What the hell am I doing back here?
Yeah.
Oh, there's another layer to peel back. So, people think that, if I fix my physical body, my diet, my health, my exercise routine, everything else in life is going to come right. Cool. But have you addressed everything that's going on in your energetic body? The things that you've stored since childhood. Maybe you need to go to a yin class and, get into the joints and release your stuff there. Have you addressed the mental, emotional body? We really think in the linear terms of, if I fix this one thing, that's going to make everything go away. And it's not. You've got to keep peeling back those layers.
Absolutely. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what you're working on right now, and if anyone wants to take advantage of your services or join Critical Mass or look into any of these other beautiful things that you're doing, how would they find you?
All right. So currently, the curriculum for the Yogic Tarot teacher training is being put together. If anyone is curious to join that, I do have one requirement. You've got to have a teacher training behind you. They're welcome to join my emailed newsletter sign up that keeps them up to date on all the releases, the curriculum, all the things coming out for that teacher training. That link is on my Facebook profile, where most people can find me on Facebook at Tam Dillon. And for those who want to do mentoring with me, so if they're practitioners and they're struggling to bridge that gap between the sacredness of the work they do and, how do I run a business? How do I build systems and structures for myself? How do I refine my craft so that it's understandable to the world around me? Or they want to do some of that self-awareness, self-development work, because we need to as practitioners, they can check out my website, which is tamdillon.com, and that'll give them all the details, as well as the link to schedule a practitioner assessment call with me. That call helps me understand where they are at as a practitioner, and what do we need to be working on together for them to become a better, more sustainable practitioner. You can also check out my YouTube channel, which is Tam Dillon Official. And then on the Critical Mass side, we have our YouTube channel where we house all our educational content. My series hosts put out amazing episodes every quarter. You can find us at Critical Mass Community, and then you can join the community itself on our website, which is criticalmass.community.
Awesome. That's amazing. There's so much good stuff going on. I love having these conversations with people because there's so many tools and resources out there for people to check out. And some will resonate with you, some won't, and that's okay. But there's so much out there, so much good stuff out there. I hope that the people who are listening really take advantage of that, because it might seem like the world is falling apart, and it kind of is, but you have to make way with the old to make room for the new. And even though it looks dark and scary right now, I can't wait for all of these new things, these new templates, these new just ways of life that we're creating are going to help people through this difficult time. I've been waiting for this, and that sounds terrible, but this is where the people who truly value the human existence and humanity itself, Mother Gaia, all of it, are really going to be able to shine and show who they really are. And I look forward to it. I can't wait.
Absolutely. It's like one big giant tower card moment for the world. And we've all got to do the tower card at some stage. I have the saying, death, taxes, and tower cards. They're the only inevitables in life, man. You can't escape those. And they're necessary. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. This has been amazing. I've loved this conversation, and I think the things we've discussed are just so important for people to hear and to know about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to our future collaborations and sharing our knowledge and wisdom with the world.
Absolutely.
If you're feeling called to go deeper, to actually sit in your own records and hear what your soul has been trying to tell you, that's what Akashic Records readings are for. I would love to hold that space for you. You can find everything at divineascensionco.com. Your answers already exist. Let's go find them together.